when her undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks lost to Clark's Iowa Hawkeyes. Not only did Iowa win, but Clark dropped a ridiculous 41 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds in the process.
Nobody is mad they won except for those CC fans who don't want them succeeding. What are we talking about, man? What are we talking about? That's such a small percentage of fans. The percentage of fans that are happy the Fever have lost. It's very different, like, predicting the Fever to lose. Because, look, I have predicted the Fever to lose.
The Indiana Fever were never supposed to be here. Not in the playoffs, not stealing wins from established teams, and definitely not knocking out the Atlanta Dream in front of a national audience. But here we are, and Sophie Cunningham just dropped a truth bomb that has set the WNBA world on fire. The league is furious the Fever won. Think about that for a second. A role player sitting courtside in a leg brace looks into the cameras and tells us flat out the WNBA didn't want Indiana in this position. That's not speculation. That's not a blogger's hot take. That's a player saying it. And let's be honest, the Fever weren't built to be here.
There's a difference between you can be a fan and predict your team to lose. Like, I'm a Leeds United fan. I predict us to lose almost every fucking game. But that doesn't mean I want to see us lose. It doesn't mean I lose my mind, like, when we win. Like, I genuinely, my favorite moment ever being at a football match was Leeds versus Chelsea. 3-0 win to Leeds. But I got tickets to that game, and like the person that I went with.
On paper, this roster shouldn't fit. No Caitlin Clark, a patchwork lineup, veterans who were supposed to be trade pieces. Yet somehow, fueled by what Cunningham calls pettiness and friendship, they pulled off the kind of win that feels less like basketball and more like a movie script. But if Sophie's right, if the league really doesn't want this team winning, then what does that say about the WNBA's priorities, about its stars, about its loyalty to the narratives it wants to push? Because make no mistake, the Indiana Fever just broke the script.
Quote, I was like, you didn't have to do all that. You didn't have to go for 40 on our dome, Boston said. But after that, it was cool because obviously now we're on the same team. So you don't have to worry about that. So anyway, I mean, yeah, of course they're clowning about college. You know, the Gamecocks were always real competitive / winning titles. They wasn't winning one that year, were they? Just pointing that out. Dawn Staley.
Strap in, because we're about to break down Sophie Cunningham's bold claim, the Fever's unlikely rise, and why this one playoff win might have rattled the league more than any loss all season. Smash that like button, drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Her Hoops, because this story is only getting started. To understand why Sophie Cunningham's comments matter, you need to rewind. Just 1 year ago, the Indiana Fever were the WNBA's punching bag, a 13-27 team with a rookie head coach in Christy Sides who spent more time apologizing for losses.
I don't know. Like, we're gonna lose, but it'll be good to see. We're gonna lose anyway. But no, we fucking won. And that's the thing where it's like you're allowed to predict a team lose, but also if you want your team to lose because a player is not there, like that's just kind of weird. At the end of the day, that means you're a fan of the player. Like, I don't think it's a lot less weird in, you know,
than firing up her players. The Fever weren't just bad, they were irrelevant. Fast forward to this season. The Fever brought in Steph White, a coach with championship credibility and no interest in coddling her roster. From day one, White's message was clear. We don't care if the league likes us. We're here to fight. And that mindset spread. Now add Sophie Cunningham, who has never shied away from controversy. She's the ultimate agitator, the kind of player fans love to hate. Even injured, sitting in a brace, she's still stirring the pot.
Even though this is Aaliyah Boston talking, it's still ridiculous. Going back to the referee thing, the fining thing. I mean, imagine being the league and letting... This is what's weird. If you were the WNBA, you would think you would just take one on the chin and shut the bleep up and sit down somewhere. But instead, you publicly make it known you fired your number one by far superstar. You fined her.
And here's the kicker. Indiana's win wasn't even pretty. This wasn't a super team flexing dominance. It was a gritty, chaotic, nervous energy kind of win. The exact kind of underdog story that leagues usually market to death. Yet Sophie insists the opposite, that instead of celebrating, the WNBA was quietly seething. So why would the league be upset? And what does that reveal about the uncomfortable relationship relationship between the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark's shadow, and the WNBA's chosen storylines. Let's break this down piece by piece. Sophie Cunningham didn't just say the league was upset. She said the Fever weren't supposed to be here. That's a bold accusation, and it raises 3 questions. Who benefits if Indiana fails? Who loses if Indiana succeeds? And why does this feel so personal? First, the roster reality. On paper, Indiana shouldn't scare anyone. Aaliyah Boston is a young star, yes, but she's still finding consistency. Kelsey Mitchell has been underrated for years, but never branded as marketable. Natasha Howard is a veteran with rings, but she's not a franchise centerpiece. Put it together, and most analysts wrote this team off as another rebuilding project. Second, the narrative. The WNBA has leaned heavily on marketable rivalries. A'ja Wilson and the Aces, Breanna Stewart and the Liberty, Angel Reese as the new face of physical swagger. The Fever? They were supposed to stay in the Caitlin Clark experiment lane. Lose without Clark, rebuild quietly, and then re-emerge when the superstar returns. But knocking out a playoff team ahead of schedule? That breaks the script. Third, the league optics. Upsets should be celebrated. That's what keeps sports alive. But Sophie's comments suggest something deeper, that the Fever are viewed less as underdogs and more as spoilers. Spoilers for the rivalries the league wants to showcase. Spoilers for the brands and markets already established. Spoilers for the hierarchy of power. So when Cunningham says the WNBA is furious, she's not just venting. She's exposing a tension every fan feels. Does the league actually want pure competition, or does it want controlled storylines? Here's where things get messy. Because if the WNBA truly doesn't want Indiana winning, then they've got a major contradiction on their hands. Think about it. So when the Fever crashed the party this year, it should have been a dream. Instead, we get whispers that the league is furious. Why? Maybe it's because Indiana doesn't fit the league's preferred image. A'ja Wilson and the Aces? Marketable. Breanna Stewart and the Liberty? Big market, big sponsors. Angel Reese? Social media dynamite. But the Fever? They're a team of misfits. Aaliyah Boston isn't embraced the way South Carolina fans back their other stars. Kelsey Mitchell doesn't have the flashy national spotlight. Sophie Cunningham is polarizing. Lexi Hull? Stanford smart, but not exactly trending on Twitter. The irony? That outsider energy is exactly what fuels their rise. Indiana isn't supposed to be here, and that's why they are. They're thriving off disrespect, off being the spoiler, off proving Sophie right every single time they win another game the script didn't call for. And if that's true, then the WNBA has a problem on its hands. Because every Fever win isn't just a victory, it's an act of rebellion against the league's own narrative. To understand why this stings the league, you've got to look at the Fever beyond the headlines. On paper, they're a collection of mismatched parts. But on the court, they've built a system that runs on sheer grit, defensive versatility, and one overlooked weapon: chemistry. Steph White doesn't run the prettiest sets. She's not out there reinventing the game with X's and O's. What she's done is far more valuable. She's built a culture where every slight, every doubt, every eye roll from the outside world becomes fuel. Cunningham's "the league is mad we won" comment isn't strategy, but it is psychology. It reinforces that every single player is fighting against more than an opponent. They're fighting against perception itself, and that's powerful. Kelsey Mitchell's scoring isn't just buckets, it's defiance. Aaliyah Boston battling in the paint isn't just rebounding, it's reclamation of respect. Even Sophie, sidelined with a leg brace, is contributing by leaning into her role as agitator-in-chief, shaping the narrative as much as she once shaped possessions. But here's the deeper layer. This team isn't loaded with household names or league darlings. They don't have a UConn legend. They don't have an Aces-level superstar. They don't even have their generational rookie on the floor. What they do have is... That's when Cinderella runs stop looking accidental and start looking inevitable. Here's the truth. What's happening with the Fever isn't just about wins and losses. It's about identity, culture, and who gets to control the WNBA's narrative. When Sophie Cunningham says the league doesn't want Indiana here, she's pointing to a bigger question. Who decides which teams matter? The WNBA has always fought for visibility, and in recent years, it's leaned on chosen stars to do the heavy lifting. Asia Wilson and the Aces symbolize dominance. Brianna Stewart and the Liberty represent prestige. Angel Reese is the drama magnet, guaranteed to keep social media buzzing. But the Fever? They're chaos. They're not supposed to fit into neat marketing packages. And yet, they've become the most unpredictable and therefore the most compelling storyline of the year. That matters, because fans don't just want polished dynasties. They want resistance. They want to believe in teams that crash the party, rewrite expectations, and expose the cracks in the system. The Fever embody that. Every win feels like a middle finger to the idea that this league can be scripted. And let's not forget the fan wars. Social media has split into factions: pro-Caitlyn fans, anti-Caitlyn fans, Fever diehards, WNBA purists. Oddly enough, Indiana's wins are uniting some of those groups while enraging others. Suddenly, fans who couldn't stand the Fever a month ago are celebrating their success, not because they love Indiana, but because they love chaos. If the WNBA leans into this, it could supercharge the league's growth. If it resists, it risks alienating fans who are here for authenticity, not PR polish. That's the broader impact of Sophie's claim. She's not just calling out frustration, she's exposing the tension between what the league wants to be and what it actually is when the games are played. So here we are. One upset, one emotional comment from Sophie Cunningham, and suddenly the Indiana Fever aren't just a playoff team. They're a mirror held up to the entire WNBA. A mirror that asks, do you really want competition or do you want control? Because let's be real, the Fever weren't supposed to be here. They weren't supposed to outlast Atlanta. They weren't supposed to look like a team that could actually matter before Caitlyn. And that's why this matters. Upsets don't just shake brackets, they shake belief systems. If Indiana can crash the playoffs without Caitlyn, what happens with her back? What happens when the league's most polarizing star rejoins a team that's already rewriting the narrative without her? That's not just a story, it's a revolution waiting to happen. So whether you think Sophie Cunningham is dead right or completely delusional, one thing is clear: the Indiana Fever are no longer passengers in this league's story. They're drivers, and every game they win makes it harder for the WNBA to pretend otherwise. If you're here for the chaos, smash that like button, share this with a fellow fan, and subscribe to Her Hoops, because this is only the beginning of Indiana's fight against the script.